All right, so to get class started, if you're going to meet my expectations, you're going to have your signed syllabus on your desk, which is what I gave you yesterday, explaining what our class is going to be about this year, the order that we're studying, how I'm getting my grading, etc. If you'd have that out on your desk, please, hopefully with your parent's signature. And then also go ahead and take out paper and a pen or pencil out and have that on your desk also, as we're going to start our first set of notes. All right, so we're going to kick off our science year with talking about observation, inference, and predictions. This is a really necessary first lesson because these three things are going to be part of our very first unit. That unit is talking about the scientific method, or also known as science inquiry. And those three things are big components in any kind of research or tests or labs that we'll be doing. So in order to go ahead and start talking about them, we have to have working definitions, a definition that we all use, and so that when we say the word observation, we're all thinking the same definition. So you would want to write down in your notes, using our senses to gather information about the world around us. And so right now you would pause the video and write this down in your science notebook. These things are things that you can actually see. Observations are facts. And notice that I put the word facts in yellow and bolded it, and it's in all caps. Anytime I do that in my lessons, you know that that's a really key description, that it's something super important to have down. So I would probably pause the video right now and go ahead and make sure you have that word written down. The next definition we need to get down is inference. And this is basically explaining your observations. It's coming up with a conclusion for what you've seen. So you're going to make a decision on the information that you've taken in, and then you're going to make that decision, and you're going to explain it or come up with a conclusion for it. And notice again in bold yellow, I really think it's important for you to remember that you can't see an inference. You see observations, but your inference is when your brain is working. So it's something your brain is thinking on. So go ahead and pause the video here and enter this into your science notebook. Okay, so when we compare observation versus inference, observations are those facts, and most of the time, or a lot of the time, you're using your senses. And you'll see what I mean by when I say most of the time or a lot of the time, because tomorrow we're going to add a little wrinkle to it. But you're using your senses, your sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. We don't use taste very often in science because that could be deadly. So those other ones are going to be super important. Those are facts that no one can argue with. It's proof. Now, an inference is going to be based on your prior knowledge and some of your opinion. And your inferences can be wrong. Observations are never wrong. They are absolute 100% fact. But inference, the conclusion you draw, could possibly be argued with and could be false. So let's see how this works. Okay, so let's look at this picture. Let's talk about three observations that you see. Pause the video and come up with three observations before we move on. All right, so hopefully your observations went something like this. Two black round objects. A black oblong triangle object with rounded ends. A orange and yellow checker or pattern object. You say, well, wait a second, you're being awfully vague. Well, when you do observations, when you make observations, you have to present concrete proof. You could say, well, I know that's a bicycle. But what you're doing is you're taking your prior knowledge of what a bicycle is and applying it to this. So really, that's not to say I see a bicycle right now in this stage is really not an observation. You're putting in an assumption or prior knowledge. So you're really on observations, you are just breaking it down to its most bare concrete fact. And so if you were to continue observations on this picture, you would say, I see something white and shiny. There's a long yellow line going through. And then you would continue like that. Now, let's talk about the inferences, because a lot of times our inferences are what we think are our observations. You say, well, this guy was riding a bike and he crashed. Did you see it happen? No, you're seeing a still shot of a situation. So you're inferring that he was riding his bike and he crashed. Even though everything that you're looking at, you in your mind know, okay, that's what it looks like when you crash your bicycle. But you're making inferences with your prior knowledge because you remember back when you crashed your bicycle or you saw someone else do that. So some other inferences that you could make with this picture is it's raining and the road was slick and it probably caused him to wreck. Or you could look at all the things around him and say, he was trying to do too much or carrying too much. He lost his balance. It looks like he got his foot stuck in his wheel and he crashed. And then you could even look at his face and say, I know what that face looks like. That face means ouch. So he's probably not enjoying this and it's probably painful. But again, those are inferences. All right, let's try another one. Go ahead and pause the video now and see if you can come up with 3 concrete observations that no one could argue with. All right, so maybe you made observations something like this: a tan, roundish object, a mint green and pink object, a mint green object that has pink swirls attached, a blue box-like object with white lines, a white textured object beneath the tan object. See, you can use spatial observations, saying that it's beneath or on top of. So from those observations that we just made, let's make some inferences. Well, you can probably infer from what you know, and this doesn't mean you'd be 100% right, but what you could infer is that this is a rabbit or a bunny, and it was let out of its cage because you know from prior knowledge that's what a cage looks like in the background. And that rabbit or bunny is sitting on a white towel, and someone put a little My Little Pony on its head from what you know and from your prior knowledge. And you could also infer, well, it's most likely owned by a little girl, because I know that mostly little girls play with My Little Ponies. Now, does that mean it's 100% factual inference? Well, you know, there's always a chance that it's not. But your inference or your prior knowledge tells you that it's a good chance that that's the case. So now let's throw in a third thing, and that is predictions. So now you're going to guess what you think will happen next based on your observations. You're guessing about the future. So would you go ahead and pause the video right now and enter this definition into your science notebook. Okay, so predictions are different from inferences. Predictions are what you think will happen next or later in the future. It's always a future thing. Whereas an inference is what's happening now or what just happened before. You're coming into it and your inference is where you are now or what led up to that. But your prediction is where you think it's going to go. Okay, so pause the video right now and make sure you know the differences between prediction and inference. All right, so with these 3 things and you understanding how these 3 things work, let's look at this picture, okay? Go ahead and pause the video and come up with 3 observations. All right, so hopefully your observations that you came up with are something like this. I see an orange triangular or cone-shaped object. I see white, shiny substance. I see a royal blue and black item. I see a lighter blue item. I see a white line of dots. I see a white, faint substance. I see a metallic silver object. I see a lime green or like a yellowish green object in the background. And so from those observations, you're now going to make some inferences. And those inferences may be something like this. The guy was walking down the sidewalk. There's a cone there that was warning him that it was slippery. He walked anyway, and he is about to fall. He's mid-fall right now. Also, I infer that that is a car on the street in the background, and it's driving down the street. That's also either a security guard in the background or even a construction worker in the background. Now, notice I'm making sure that you know that this is all, he's mid-fall, because it hasn't happened yet. Your inference is that right now he's in the middle of falling, and that prior to that he must have slipped to get into this position. Now we move to that prediction. Now the prediction would say he's about to hit the ground. Is our prediction always right? Absolutely not. There is a slight chance that this guy will save the fall. He'll throw that one of those legs back there and actually catch himself and not hit the ground. Highly unlikely in the position that he's in, but there's always that chance. So predicting even more, you would say, I predict that the coffee is actually going to completely fly out of the cup. It's not just starting to fly out. I predict that it will continue and he'll lose it all. I also predict that the car will continue driving and will leave. I predict that if that is a police officer or a guard, he's going to run over and help the guy. Or if it's a construction worker, I don't know, he may even chuckle to himself. Who knows? Now you can do the same thing for this picture as well. Come up with observations, inferences, and predictions for this one. This one's a little harder because there's a lot of really odd looking things in this picture that would be really hard to describe. Because you can't say, I see brown sticks, because you're assuming they're sticks from your prior knowledge. You can say, I see brown lines. The guy's holding a fish down here. We know that, but to make an observation, you would have to say, I see a silver object. But your prior knowledge knows that guy's holding a fish. And even if you look at the color, like the water, you know that's water from your prior knowledge, but to make an observation and describe that would be pretty difficult. You can do this for all of these pictures. Try making observations and inferences and predictions. The prediction part is probably one of the easier parts from our prior knowledge. And you can get really fun and carried away with it, like, oh, they're going to get attacked by cheetahs. Or I think she's just going to take a picture. The cheetahs are going to get bored with them and run off. This one's a fun picture to make observations and predictions and inferences. Stinks to be the fish that day, I think. And then this one. This is it's a bad day when your house is in the ocean. We all have bad days, but I don't think any of us have ever had house in the ocean bad kind of day. All right, so this is going to be the end of our observations, inferences, and predictions. Make sure that you have these things in your notes and get ready to do your assignment.